The tragic conclusions. The Great Society killed Henry as surely as if they had marched him to the wall and ordered 10 riflemen to fire a volley into his poor head. His accomplished death was not as sudden or as obvious as all that, but just as sure. The word society has been used so often in the preceding story that perhaps it should be defined. Webster gives it as the social order, especially as a state or system restricting the individual, community life. It is the way of life that was imposed on Henry against his reason, and in spite of all his efforts to resist it, by a system bent on the destruction of Henry's freedom and liberty. A system that seeks to enslave cannot tolerate the presence of one free man, so it concludes that all the Henrys must succumb to the system or die. The tragedy of it all is that Henry died, and the real killer was never apprehended or identified in the community in which he lived. He died like a badgered, desperate animal in a cage that society said was of his own choosing. But it was society's way of life that was Henry's killer. They killed him with kindness, liberated him into slavery, prospered him into poverty, freed him into bondage. They reduced him to a tool of his tools, a beast of burden in his own carefully created harness. This is the subtlety, the sheer genius of it all, and such genius can only be the work of some mastermind more cunning than the smartest of men. The second tragedy is that in spite of the fact that the method of his death has been made known and the identity of his killer exposed, few will ever be made aware of the danger of this destructive system. This tragic drama is being played out in millions of lives around us, and perhaps in our own lives. Yet the majority of people in the clutches of the Great Society will not take the time to listen to this book, or to any other for that matter. And a third tragedy is that of the few who will listen and be alarmed at its message, practically none will do anything about it. Not because they cannot, but because they will not. Though their heart cries out for liberation, their mind and body are too tired to resist and too accustomed to the luxuries of the Great Society. They're like a great outdoor dog who, grown accustomed to the security and warmth of the fireside, resents being pushed out into the cold night. He would rather sacrifice his liberty and freedom than give up his indulgence. A famous classical scholar, in describing the decline and fall of the Grecian and Roman Empire, said, "In the end, more than they wanted freedom, they wanted security, a comfortable life, and they lost all security and comfort and freedom." Like them, we are being institutionalized, regimented, and enslaved by a something-for-nothing philosophy that's destroying us all by the weapons of our own greed. The Great Society stands by with its cleverly conceived credit system that allows us to spend our way to slavery while being denied even the pleasure of enjoying that which enslaves us. Recently, it was announced that science was working on a way to preserve men's brains in glass jars after death. These jars are to be filed away and connected to a giant computer which would continue to feed electronic impulses to the brains and keep them alive. It is said that every experience of life can be duplicated and experienced by the brain through electronic impulses. Well, it seems to me that we have just about perfected this system already. Our brains are fed electronic signals through radio and TV. All of our thinking is done for us. Our course of action is decided by the presence and pressure of an electronic age, and the only difference, as I see it, is that they have done us the favor of leaving our brains in our bodies while constantly controlling them. We are fast becoming a generation of intellectual morons. Like children, we find ourselves repeating the tired jingles and off-color stories of last night's TV and the empty sayings of the great men quoted in last night's paper, whose names we cannot remember. Most of us go through this computerized life without an original thought or a mental or heart conviction about anything. The average man on the street cannot engage in any conversation whose subject ranges beyond the content of yesterday's radio, TV, or newspaper. His buying choices are already made subconsciously for him. He's swept along by this present society in a predetermined course arbitrarily decided by others. He is afraid to question, challenge, or even suspect the rightness of the world around him, and if he does, he's branded as a reactionary, a fanatical troublemaker. He accepts as a way of life that which he hates and abandons without a fight that which he loves. He succumbs to the influence of present-day brainwashing like a man under drugs. He is institutionalized early in life, and freedom of thought or action is only an empty dream. He's told, you can't fight progress until he believes it, and told also that all progress is good for him whether he can appreciate it or not. He lives in a make-believe world that trusts in the ultimate good of society, and is kept going by the stupid belief that society is looking out for his interests and will see to it that he never had it so good. The freethinkers are fast disappearing from the modern scene, for they are the only menace to this system. The daily papers, the TV and radio news reports boast that they are serving the best interest of the best informed generation in history. Best informed of what? What good does all this vast daily news work in us except to saturate our already overburdened heart and mind with all the ills of all men everywhere, and so further involve us? Few of us have heard anything through the news media of our time that added 1 inch to our stature or helped us to be better men or women in this life. If we read the sickening details of one war, rape, robbery, murder, riot, or famine, or heard the gory details of one senseless automobile crash, what shall it profit us if we hear of 1,000 more? Will our being better informed prevent the further happenings of such things? Few of us ever received a letter of which the contents were worth the postage, or a telephone call that conveyed a message worthy of the men, machines, money, time, energy, and life wasted in the vast, complex system of electronic genius needed to convey it to our home. The greatest waste in life is life itself. It is synonymous with time and is priceless. Yet the people of our day spend it as easily for nothing as they do the money they have not yet earned. We're all wrapped up in a feverish endeavor to solve the problems of livelihood and have only come up with a solution far more complicated than the problem itself. We labor on desperately to liberate ourselves and only succeed in enslaving ourselves by our newfound liberty. That the technological and material advance in the past 75 years has been astounding, none can deny. But it's time that we sober up from our materialistic binge long enough to tell the next generation what a fantastic price we have paid in mental, physical, and moral involvement. We've paid for it with the real meat of life itself and are left with the empty shell. Jesus said that a man's life did not consist in the things he possessed, but no one heard him. We have heard him, but we do not believe him. We've never quite learned that a man is rich in proportion to the number of things he can afford to leave alone in this life. We are told by the super salesman of this instant insanity called the Great Society that our great advances have lengthened the lifespan of man by 25 or 30 years. A noteworthy achievement, I'm sure, but would it be out of reason to inquire as to what our lives have been saved for? We're told by the hawkers of this master delusion that we never had it so good. Good for what, I might ask of them? They tell us we never had so much leisure time. To be spent on what? We live out of our medicine cabinets on vitamins, tranquilizers, and pep pills to get us through the day, and then, when we fall into bed exhausted, we lie there wound up like a dollar watch. We dare not sleep too soundly, for at any moment our night may turn to day in a brilliant flood of electric light. or the phone by our bed might call us to further mental and emotional complexities for which we have no capacity. And we may be driven out into the night to our automobile to find ourselves hurtling across the country at 80 miles an hour. The impressive statistics of the peddlers of this society extol the glories of our high-speed transportation system. And no one seems to think or care about the fact that upon the bloody altar of this never-satisfied and ugly God, we lay thousands of dead bodies annually and hundreds of thousands of broken, twisted, maimed, and bleeding ones. All of this because we've been told that we have the wonderful privilege of getting nowhere fast in order to do nothing when we get there. Hurry is the prayer of the devoted, while exhaust fumes contaminate and pollute the air we breathe and eat our lungs away. Billions of dollars annually are sacrificed in the manufacture, repair, maintenance, and improvement of this mechanical Frankenstein that is fast devouring our farmlands and vomiting them out in never-ending streams of asphalt and concrete jungles. This is only one of this society's blessings that threatens to bless us into oblivion at 80 miles an hour. One last sobering thought comes to mind as I conclude this section. Being the creatures of habit we are, what inheritance shall we pass on to our children? We're concerned about their education and the material fortune we can leave them, but what about the legacy of a way of life? We don't seem to remember that as we walk, our feet are creating upon the impressionable earth a path that, although we are long gone, our children will continue to follow without thought or reason in regard to the rightness of it. The time to do something is now. Yesterday has been swallowed up by the gulping mouth of time, and tomorrow is only an illusion. We must not continue to live this hectic life without some thought about the awful harvest we are reaping. Let us be sure, as we march to his frantic cadence, that we are hearing the right drummer. Let us also recall that Thomas Jefferson said, "The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and if we have any liberty left, let us make it our life's business to be vigilant, lest we lose it."